When my son texted me, "You don't need to come for Christmas this year," I didn't cry, I didn't beg. I simply went to the county clerk's office. That house, the one I paid half of, I removed my name from the deed. But not how you think. Because what they didn't know was my name was also on something far more powerful. And on Christmas morning, while they were unwrapping gifts under a tree I decorated, I handed them a letter, one that would make their faces go pale and their future unravel. The sun had just started to peek through the curtains when Evelyn opened her eyes. The smell of cinnamon still lingered faintly from the apple pie she baked the night before, and downstairs she could already hear the hum of the dishwasher Mia had likely run late at night. Evelyn smiled to herself. Another peaceful morning, another chance to be useful, to give, to love. At 63, Evelyn had settled into a rhythm most widows would envy. After her husband passed a decade ago, her son Jason had insisted she move in with him and Mia. "You shouldn't be alone, Mom," he had said warmly. "This house has plenty of space. We'll make it yours, too." Back then, Evelyn sold her old home, used half the proceeds to help Jason buy this bigger place, and moved in, happy to still be a part of something. She had her own room upstairs, across from her grandson, Caleb's. She cooked dinner most nights. She picked Caleb up from preschool, folded laundry, remembered every allergy, every birthday, every report card. Mia worked long hours at her boutique, and Jason was always on business trips, so Evelyn became the glue of the house without even trying. The neighbors adored her. "Evelyn's the heart of that home," Mrs. Kirkland said during a block party. "That girl Mia lucked out with a mother-in-law like you." Evelyn only chuckled, brushing off the compliment like she always did. It wasn't about being appreciated, it was about family. Still, this year's Christmas felt different. By mid-November, Evelyn had already started unpacking decorations. Boxes of glass ornaments, a crocheted angel her husband once bought at a flea market, strands of lights she'd carefully untangled and rewound every year. She pulled out the ceramic village, the one that lit up when plugged in, and set it gently on the mantel. One afternoon, while stringing the garlands across the staircase, Mia walked in, holding her coffee like a prop in a lifestyle commercial. She glanced at the garland with polite disinterest. "You know," she began casually, "Jason and I were thinking, maybe this year we handle Christmas." Evelyn turned, half smiling, a bit of tinsel still clinging to her sleeve. "Oh? Yeah, we've been talking about simplifying. You've done so much every year. Maybe this time we just keep it low-key, less stress for you." It wasn't framed as an exclusion. Mia was careful like that. Her voice was always neutral, her words wrapped in sugar. But Evelyn felt a ripple in her chest. "Oh, all right," she said, slowly pulling her hand away from the banister. "If that's what you want." Mia gave her a nod and walked off, as if a box had been checked. Evelyn stood there a moment longer, staring at the half-decorated stair rail, then gently unwound the garland and packed it away. The weeks that followed brought small shifts. Jason came home later and later. Dinner conversations shrank to monosyllables. Evelyn noticed her name missing from the calendar reminders on the family iPad. Mia stopped leaving notes on the fridge like she used to. Then came the group chat incident. Evelyn had started typing a message one morning, something sweet, a photo of the cookies she baked for Caleb's school fundraiser. But when she opened the thread, she noticed it was gone. At first, she thought it was a glitch. Then she noticed Jason and Mia whispering later that day in the hallway. Another time, she went to retrieve a winter coat from the hall closet and found that her collection of vintage scarves had disappeared. Mia had replaced the coat rack with minimalist metal hooks. Evelyn's family photos on the mantel were swapped out for abstract art and curated family portraits, ones she wasn't in. She tried not to read too much into it. Maybe it was just time for change, but it hurt, in small, quiet ways. The final cut came from Caleb. He was playing in her room while she folded sheets, chattering about superheroes and snowflakes. Then, as he lined up his action figures on the windowsill, he said, "Mommy said this room is going to be the new storage room after we get the extra furniture out." Evelyn paused mid-fold. She did? Yeah, she said you'll be staying somewhere else for a while, maybe at Grandma Donna's. Donna, Mia's mother. Evelyn smiled tightly and changed the subject, but inside, her heart was sinking. That night, while returning from the kitchen, Evelyn passed the living room and heard muffled voices. "She's been here long enough," Mia said, her voice low but sharp. "It's time we get our space back. I didn't sign up for a full-time roommate." "She paid for half this house," Jason murmured. "You know that. She won't make trouble. She's nice. Always has been, and she's not going to fight us." Evelyn stood in the shadows, motionless. The words carved through her like wind on broken glass. They had redefined her place in the home. Not family, not elder, just an unwanted guest. It was the morning of December 23rd. The sky outside was a soft gray, and Evelyn had just taken a tray of gingerbread cookies out of the oven when her phone buzzed on the counter. She wiped her hands on her apron, smiling as she picked it up, expecting a sweet message from Jason. Perhaps something about picking up extra wrapping paper or Caleb asking for hot cocoa. Instead, the message was short, cold, surgical. "Don't worry about preparing anything this year. We have our own plans. You don't need to come." Evelyn stood frozen in the kitchen. Her thumb hovered over the screen. She read it again, then again. The words didn't change. No emojis, no softener, no "love you, Mom." Just a polite shove. She stared at the cookies. Their cheerful little icing smiles mocked her. Her fingers trembled slightly as she typed a response. "Is everything okay? Did I do something wrong?" No reply. She called. Once, twice. Straight to voicemail. Then she called Mia. "Hi, this is Mia. I can't talk right now." She didn't leave a message. Instead, she sat down at the kitchen table. The house was quiet except for the ticking wall clock and the faint hum of the dishwasher. Her hands rested in her lap, perfectly still. Later that afternoon, Evelyn placed the cookies into a tin, sealed the lid, and set it on the counter. She walked upstairs to her room where the suitcase she used once a year for short church retreats was stored. She pulled it out, opened her closet, and began to fold. A sweater, a nightgown, a framed photo of her husband and Jason when he was just 6, a scarf her late sister knitted her one Christmas. She packed like someone preparing for something inevitable, but not yet real. Then came Christmas Eve. As if drawn by morbid instinct, Evelyn opened her Facebook account, and there it was, a photo posted by Mia, geotagged at a cabin resort 3 hours away. Jason stood next to Mia and Caleb, all of them beaming in matching red pajamas in front of a massive tree. Next to them, smiling just as brightly, was Donna, Mia's mother, wearing Evelyn's reindeer brooch. The caption read, "Our cozy little Christmas away from the city. Grateful for family." Evelyn blinked hard, her throat tightened. That brooch had been in her jewelry box just last week. She scrolled through the comments. "Such a beautiful family. Merry Christmas. So happy to see you all together." Together. Without her. On Christmas morning, Evelyn stood by the kitchen window staring at the empty driveway. Snow had begun to fall gently, covering the ground in a thin, clean layer. The silence in the house was so complete, she could hear the ticking of the clock from the living room. She poured herself a cup of tea, though it tasted like nothing. By noon, she had zipped the suitcase shut. She looked around her room, now stripped of any warmth. The family portraits were gone, packed away. The bookshelf sat half empty. She opened the drawer of her nightstand, pulled out a yellow folder labeled House Documents, and hesitated. She opened it. There, in black and white, was the deed to the house. 2 names printed clearly at the top, Jason Miller and Evelyn Miller. Still there, still hers. She sat back slowly, stunned, not because she had forgotten, but because she had let herself forget. Over the years, as meals were cooked and floors scrubbed, as Mia took over more of the house, Evelyn had started to believe she was just a guest, a visitor, someone passing through. But the paper didn't lie. Her name was there, her claim, her history, her right. The ache in her chest shifted, from grief to a cold, heavy awareness. She thought back to the early days, how Jason had cried when they lost his father, how he swore to keep the family close, how he asked her to help him buy a home because he didn't have the full down payment. She had wired her life savings into that house, paid the property taxes for the first 2 years. Jason had insisted she add her name, just for security, he said. But the house is yours as much as mine, Mom. And now, somehow, she'd been erased. In their minds, not legally. She opened a second envelope in the folder, her original deposit check, still paper-clipped to the receipt from the title company. She smiled, the kind of smile that doesn't reach the eyes. Then she reached for her phone. Not to call, but to search. Real estate attorneys near me. If they didn't want her at Christmas, fine. But they were about to remember who helped build that roof above their heads. On the morning of December 26th, Evelyn walked into a modest law office tucked between a nail salon and a dry cleaner. The sign on the door read, Stein & Associates, Family and Property Law. She held a worn leather folder close to her chest, the same folder she'd kept in her nightstand for over a decade. It felt heavier today. The receptionist greeted her kindly and offered her tea. Evelyn declined. She wasn't here to be comforted. She was here to be clear. 20 minutes later, she sat across from a woman named Carla Stein. Sharp blazer, warm eyes, no nonsense. Carla reviewed the documents carefully, flipping through the deed, the payment records, the original title transfer. "You're a co-owner," Carla said, glancing up. "A legal 50-50 split. You're not just a resident. You have full rights. This house can't be refinanced, sold, or transferred without your written consent." Evelyn nodded. "I never signed anything after the original documents. Nothing." Carla's brows furrowed. "Are you sure? No refinancing? No lien approvals?" Evelyn hesitated. "Not that I remember, but I never paid attention to the mail much. Mia handled most of it. Said it was easier that way." "Would you mind if I looked into the property records with the county?" "Please," Evelyn said. They ran the search. Carla's fingers moved swiftly across her keyboard. Then she paused. "There's a record here from last year, a second mortgage." Evelyn's stomach dropped. "What?" $25,000, taken out against the property. It required both signatures, or what the bank assumed were both. Carla turned her screen. There it was, a digital copy of a signed document, Jason's signature, and next to it, something that looked like Evelyn's. But Evelyn had never seen this form. She stared at it. "That's not my handwriting. That's a copy." Carla leaned back. "We'll need to request an official verification, but yes, it looks forged. They used your name, your share of the house, as collateral." Evelyn exhaled sharply, not out of shock, but out of the quiet fury that rises when betrayal confirms itself. She left the law office with a list of next steps, a business card, and something else: clarity. Back home, she didn't cry, she didn't confront. She simply brewed a cup of coffee, sat at the dining table, and opened her email. While sorting through spam and promotional ads, a new message pinged into her inbox. From communitybankalertsagbeehome.com. Subject, ownership change, Miller residence. Confirmation required. She clicked. "Dear Ms. Evelyn Miller, we recently received a request to remove your name from the deed associated with 112 Maple Lane. Please click the link below to confirm or dispute this action." Evelyn stared at the message. They were trying to erase her, legally, and they didn't even have the decency to ask. Over the next few days, Evelyn met with Carla twice more. They compiled documents, built a timeline, filed an inquiry with the bank, and prepared an affidavit to challenge the second mortgage. Evelyn also requested a hold on any title changes. But what disturbed her most wasn't the forgery. It was Jason's silence. He had once been the boy who cried when she scraped her knee. who begged her to teach him how to ride a bike, who sang off-key Christmas songs with her at the piano. Now he was a man who had borrowed against her share of the house, faked her signature, and said nothing. Carla handed her a printed report. There's something else. Evelyn scanned the page. Credit card debts, personal loans, business investment losses under Jason's name. He was nearly $60,000 in the red. And then she understood. It wasn't just neglect. It was desperation. Jason hadn't turned on her out of malice. He was drowning, and he chose to use her as a lifeboat. She remembered how tired he looked lately, how short his temper had become, how Mia had started taking the car more often, leaving him with the older one. Maybe he wasn't the villain. Maybe he was just too afraid to speak up. But that didn't excuse it. Evelyn sat on her porch later that evening, watching the snow melt into thin slush at the edge of the sidewalk. The wind was quiet. She thought about all the Christmas mornings she'd spent building forts out of pillows for Jason, all the nights she'd skipped dinner so he could eat more, all the birthdays she'd worked double shifts just to afford gifts. She had never expected repayment, only respect, only a seat at the table she helped build. Instead, they took her name off the invitation and tried to take it off the deed, too. She took a slow sip of tea. It was time to stop being quiet. Evelyn had never been one for vengeance. Her strength had always been quiet, the kind that showed up in casseroles and handwritten cards, not in courtrooms or confrontation. So when Carla asked, "Do you want to sue them?" Evelyn shook her head. "No, I don't want a war," she said. "I want my peace." Instead, she chose a path only a woman with clarity, dignity, and legal leverage could take. Carla drew up a transfer agreement. Evelyn would relinquish her ownership of the current house, but not freely. Instead, her share would be converted into an equal value investment in a small, tidy property on the edge of town, a house she had quietly selected the week prior. It wasn't about escaping. It was about reclaiming space. Carla ensured the transaction was airtight. Evelyn's 50% equity was legally extracted and moved. The new deed bore her name alone. No shared ownership, no risk of betrayal. Just a quiet little house with a view of a park and enough space for a garden. Before she left the law office, Carla slid a final document across the table, a freeze order on any future refinancing or ownership changes on the Maple Lane property, pending resolution of forgery concerns. Jason and Mia wouldn't be able to touch it without a lengthy court process now. Evelyn nodded and signed without blinking. 3 days later, she returned home to pack. Jason and Mia were still at the resort, posting selfies and holiday captions that made no mention of her. She moved through the house carefully, touching each surface once, like saying goodbye to something already dead. She didn't take much. A suitcase, her yellow folder, Caleb's first drawing of them together, and a pair of candlesticks from her wedding. The rest she left behind. On the kitchen table, she placed an envelope. Inside was a handwritten note. "This Christmas, I'm truly not here. But never forget who built this house, who fed its heart, and who kept it warm when no one else would." Mom. She didn't leave a return address. She didn't need to. Jason and Mia returned 2 days after New Year's. The house felt colder than usual. Jason walked into the kitchen and frowned. Evelyn's chair was gone. Her casserole dishes weren't in the sink. The hall closet stood half empty. "Did she leave?" Mia asked. Jason shrugged. "She didn't say anything to me." But when he opened the drawer by the stove, he found the envelope. He read the letter once, then again. Mia read over his shoulder, scoffing. "What's that supposed to mean? Built this house?" Jason didn't answer. Something inside him was twisting. Later that evening, he logged into their mortgage portal to check the refinancing pre-approval status. They'd been planning to pull $40,000 in equity to help fund Mia's boutique expansion. But the portal showed a red warning banner. "Legal hold placed on property. Contact administrator." Confused, Jason called the bank. After 20 minutes on hold, a representative told him plainly, there's an ongoing investigation into a possible fraudulent signature on the secondary mortgage. Additionally, the ownership status has changed. The co-owner has legally withdrawn their stake and moved assets elsewhere. The property is now under legal freeze. No loans or transfers can proceed. Jason's mouth went dry. She moved the money? Yes, sir. The ownership split is no longer active. You and your spouse are listed as sole occupants, but the equity from the former co-owner is no longer available. Mia exploded. She what? Jason didn't respond. She knew we were planning on using that for the store. I told you to keep her out of the paperwork. She wasn't in the way, Jason said, rubbing his temples. She was the paperwork. Mia stormed through the house, opening drawers, cabinets, closets, searching for any sign Evelyn might still be there. But there was nothing left, not even the faint smell of her lavender detergent. When she pulled open the file cabinet in the office, she found a copy of the deed. 2 names had once been there. Now there was a void where Evelyn's name used to be, legally erased, but with every ounce of her value taken along with it. Mia clutched the edge of the desk. All this time, she whispered. We thought she was just staying here. Jason finally spoke. She was staying here, because it was her house too. They sat in silence. For the first time since the holidays began, the silence wasn't peaceful. It was loud, crushing, the kind of silence that echoes long after someone's gone. It was exactly 1 month after Christmas when Evelyn received the invitation. A simple text from Jason. Mom, can you come by this Saturday? We'd like to talk, please. No pretense, no emojis. Just quiet desperation. Evelyn read it while sipping coffee in the cozy sunroom of her new cottage by the sea. The house was small, just 2 bedrooms and a kitchen that caught the morning light perfectly. But it was hers. Fully. Legally. Emotionally. She didn't reply immediately. She waited 2 days before texting back. I'll come by at 3. When Saturday arrived, she pulled into the driveway on Maple Lane for the first time in weeks. The snow had melted into gray slush, and the wreath on the front door was still hanging, wilted and forgotten. Jason opened the door, looking thinner than she remembered. His eyes were tired. Mia stood behind him, arms crossed tightly, a stiff smile barely masking her tension. Hey, Mom, Jason said, voice cracking. Evelyn nodded politely. Jason, Mia. They moved into the living room where Caleb played quietly in the corner, building towers from Legos, blissfully unaware of the emotional debris between the adults. Jason motioned for her to sit, but she remained standing. He cleared his throat. I wanted to say I'm sorry. For everything. For how we treated you. For not standing up when I should have. I miss you. His voice broke. He looked away, ashamed. Evelyn's eyes softened slightly, but her stance remained firm. I'm not angry, she said gently, but I'm not the woman who lived here anymore. Mia frowned. So that's it? You just leave? After everything? Evelyn looked at her. After everything? Jason tried to interrupt, but Evelyn raised her hand. I gave this house more than money, she said, reaching into her purse. She pulled out a folder, thin, worn, but stacked with proof. Here, every receipt, every deposit, every tax I covered when you two were just starting out. She set the folder on the coffee table like it weighed 100 pounds. I didn't destroy anything. I simply took what was mine. Mia's voice was sharp, but you knew we were planning to refinance. You ruined our plans. Evelyn turned to her, calm as ever. No, Mia, you just assumed I wouldn't notice, or wouldn't matter. Jason sank into the couch, face in his hands. I didn't know about the second mortgage until after Mia signed it. I should have said something. I was scared. We're in so much debt. And you thought using my name without asking would fix that? Evelyn asked, her voice quiet but firm. Silence. Then Evelyn reached into her purse again. This time she pulled out a smaller envelope. She walked over to Caleb, bent down, and placed it in his toy box. Mia blinked. "What's that?" Evelyn smiled. "A gift for him. It's not for you to open." She turned back to Jason. "I've moved to a house near the coast, a little place I dreamed of owning since I was young. I used part of my savings and something extra." Jason looked up, confused. "Extra?" "I started a fund years ago," Evelyn said softly, quietly. "I set aside what I could every month. I called it the someday account. Half of it went to the new house. The other half—" She glanced toward the toy box. Jason's eyes widened. "You made a fund for Caleb?" Evelyn nodded. "A scholarship. In my will, it will be named in his honor. For when he wants to go to college or do something meaningful, he deserves a future unburdened by your mistakes." Mia stood frozen. Jason's voice cracked again. "Why would you do that after everything?" Evelyn looked at him with deep, unwavering eyes. "Because being your mother doesn't stop when you stop being a son. But it does mean I get to protect the one part of this family still untouched by ego." She walked toward the door. Jason stood up. "Will we see you again?" Evelyn paused. "You'll see me when you stop looking at me as someone who owes you something." She opened the door. "And start seeing me as someone who already gave you everything." Then she stepped into the soft afternoon light, leaving the door open behind her, not as an invitation, but as a choice. Evelyn's new home sat at the end of a quiet cul-de-sac just 5 blocks from the ocean. Each morning she rose with the sun, sipping coffee on her small patio as the breeze carried in the scent of salt and eucalyptus. No one knocked on her door asking for errands. No voices echoed down the hallway questioning what she cooked or when she would be done in the kitchen. Her life was no longer filled with obligation, but with intention. She joined a book club at the local library. Twice a week, she volunteered at the senior center, helping other women sort through papers, life transitions, and regrets. The neighbors came to know her not as the woman who lived with her son, but as Evelyn, the graceful, sharp woman with stories to tell and wisdom to offer. One afternoon, her neighbor Joanne asked if she'd always been so composed. "No," Evelyn chuckled. "But the more pieces you lose, the more you learn what's worth holding on to." She didn't talk about Jason or Mia much, but she didn't need to. People who had lived long enough recognized grief when it had been neatly folded and put away. Jason had called 3 times since that last meeting. Each voicemail was gentler than the last, but Evelyn hadn't picked up. Instead, she wrote him a letter. "Dear Jason, I heard your messages. I appreciate your effort to reach out. But I hope you understand. This space I've created is not a punishment. It's protection. For you, for me, for what little still matters between us. Sometimes love means being near. Other times it means stepping back so no one has to pretend anymore. I'm not angry, but I am awake now, and I hope you are too. Take care of Caleb." She mailed it without a return address. Evelyn kept a framed photo of Caleb on her new mantle. He was still so young, too young to understand what had passed, too pure to carry blame. That's why she had set the fund aside, quietly, without fanfare. It wasn't for Jason or Mia to spend. It was for a future Caleb hadn't yet imagined. One morning in early spring, Evelyn sat at her writing desk and pulled out a thick sheet of parchment. She wrote slowly, with care. To Caleb, "Someday when you're older and someone hands you this letter, I hope you'll understand that family isn't just about names or shared walls. It's about protection, respect, and the space to grow freely. I left the house, but I never left you. You were the part of that home I still believed in. Inside this box are things I hope will help you remember that truth." She included 3 items: a worn copy of Charlotte's Web they had read together when he was 4, a photograph of them baking cookies, and a certified document showing the scholarship fund in his name, already growing interest. She tied the box with twine and placed it in her closet for safekeeping. She would leave it with her attorney with instructions for delivery when Caleb turned 18. Her days passed peacefully. She tended a small herb garden, hosted Sunday teas for the women on her block, read in the afternoons, and strolled to the beach in the evenings. The world no longer pulled at her from every direction. For once, she belonged only to herself. But she never forgot. One evening, as the sky turned amber and the ocean murmured softly beyond the hill, Evelyn opened her journal and wrote the words that had formed slowly, silently, over months. Blood makes you relatives. Love makes you family. And sometimes, the kindest thing you can do for both is to walk away before your presence turns into resentment. She closed the journal and smiled. Evelyn had been erased once, but not anymore. Now her name lived where it mattered, in property she owned, in a scholarship fund that bore her legacy, and in the memory of a little boy who once called her Nana with his whole heart. And now I ask you, if you were pushed out of your own family, would you leave in silence, or would you reclaim your worth like Evelyn did?